Hey everybody, Brent from the Similitude of Prague. Hope everybody's doing well. Today's review is on a gentleman that really needs no introduction. He's probably one of the best known progressive musicians out there, and he's definitely top 10, top 5, in my opinion, of my own personal groups and bands that I like. That, of course, is Mr. Neal Morse and his new album, The Dreamer, Joseph Part 1. Sorry for Sinclair. Anyways, great album cover too, in my opinion. All right, come back and we'll discuss the new Morris album. Hey guys, now the seemingly tireless progressive rock god, in my opinion, Mr. Neal Morris, is back for yet another Bible story concept album. This time heading to the book of Genesis, retelling the iconic story of Joseph and his brothers. I must mention the difference between one of his solo albums and one of his projects or full band efforts. I feel there is an inevitable decrease in musicianship and boundary pushing without the rest of the band. Putting this latest project, The Dreamer, Joseph Part 1, behind the eight ball, kind of even before it starts. Now, let me explain to you, I'm not in any way putting down Neal Morris or anything. I just find he works better if he's got a group effort where I think they can all bounce each other's ideas off and see what works best. Now, let me try to tell you what I mean by that. 2020's Sola Gratia was a fine solo album, but it seemed to be like an appetizer when compared to what the Neal Morse band would release later, Innocence and Danger. It should be noted that The Dreamer is set to be a double album as well. Part 2 will release early next year, so full expectations should be reserved until the project can be listened to as a whole. But in a perfect world, that can't be. I'm not going to wait for the second one to give you my thoughts on both of them. Now, as in most Morris albums, this, like a lot of them, The Dreamer, begins with an overture, a musical glimpse of what's to come, perhaps. These recurring motifs could perhaps be my favorite part of Morris's music. What sets him above the rest is his ability to string together melodies throughout an album, utilizing them in various ways, and lead to an emotional conclusion. The overture reprise are one of two songs that are definitely highlights to me on this album. The second song, the very powerful ballad Before the World Was, is the second song on the album that I think is one that I would recommend. Before the World is a fairly strong opener using some Neal Morse classic techniques such as background gospel choir and a rising guitar solo. The message of this song is commendable, showing from the onset of no matter what Joseph will go through in his life, God has always chosen him for a purpose. Next, we have the bluesy number Million Miles Away, and this succeeds in giving a kind of a road trip feeling to the story so far. And this is noting Joseph's out-of-body experiences from Genesis chapter 37. And following A Million Miles Away, we have a song called Burns Like a Wheel, and this gives us the first real taste of progressive music. With its unorthodox time signatures, out-of-key notes, and various instruments. Also introduced here are guest vocalists who, much like a Broadway play, each assume a role in the story. Also introduced here are guest vocalists too, who, much like a Broadway play, each assume a role in the story. These vocalists include Matt Smith of Theodicy and Ted Leonard of Spock's Beard and Paddleton Seeking Animals, are mainly the same cast who accomplished Morris on 2019's product Jesus Christ the Exorcist. On the song The Pit, the guest vocals to me come across as kind of unpolished, off pitch, slightly harsher tone than the rest of the album, which takes away from the overall production for me. I'm not sure if this was intentional or not. Now we have the lead single, Like a Wall, and this has some interesting moments, but the main riff is stale and feels recycled, and the lyrics are a bit flimsy. At certain points on the album, it sounded like Morris is reusing past material. Does anybody else kind of feel this way? Now, I probably don't have to mention this, but like many Morris albums, there is sure to run the gamut of genres. But I've noticed in his solo work, at least recently, the last few albums, there's been a favoring of more of a blues side over progressive rock, which in my opinion is a nice change. Liar Liar and Gold Dust lean heavily into blues rock, with the latter even including a saxophone solo. The resulting experience may simply depend on which genres the listener prefers over others. I like to think my mind is pretty open and wide, and I like hearing different styles of or genres in the music. And I think that's why Neal Morse has always been an interest to me, because it's not necessarily always going to be the same format, but you will get the same genres throughout. I hope I tried to explain that without sounding like too much of a... All right, next we have a song called Slave Boy, and this produces the diamond in the rough vocals of the great Talon David as Potiphar's wife. And as was the case in The Exorcist, anytime she takes the mic, the production is definitely elevated. Now, for a little information, Potiphar is the captain of Pharaoh's guard, who is said to have purchased Joseph as a slave and imprisoned him by his intelligence, makes him the master of the household. Potiphar's wife, who was known for her infidelities, took a liking to Joseph and attempted to seduce him, when Joseph refused her advances and ran off, leaving his garments and articles in her hands. She retaliated by falsely accusing him of rape, and Potiphar had Joseph imprisoned. Another highlight of the album is Eric Gillette's guitar solo on Waiting on You, which leads nicely into the most unique song of the bunch, the fully choral I Will Wait on the Lord, which depicts Joseph's humbling behavior while in prison. It is a surprisingly complex arrangement in its own right, but to even attempt such an eyebrow-raising song is to be applauded. Now, if that isn't prog, I don't know what is. One more bright spot on the album is the multifaceted Heaven in Charge of Hell, as it is probably the best representation of each element of the album, and seeing Joseph from the guard's perspective as an intriguing thought. Now that we've come to the end of the album, I tried to be fair, and I hope I didn't come across too negative. Neal Morse is still and will be the prog king. And like a lot of people that I've talked to about this album, we all had kind of reservations of this was going to be another Jesus Christ the Exorcist, which in my opinion didn't work 100%. It was okay, but there was just too much vocalists, and it seemed kind of confusing at times, but at the same time also seemed kind of, how would I describe it? Too busy. But that's just me, and I know that it obviously sold well because the company that put the album out, which is Frontiers Records, wanted him to do another album. So we get The Dreamer Part 1, the Joseph story, and it's a definite improvement over Jesus Christ the Exorcist, and I hope Part 2 does kind of make this story more rounded and more even. And as a final rating, I really struggled with this because I am a huge Morse fan, but at the same time, there was a lot of recycled music here, which to me is not a bad thing, but at the same time, it's nice to hear something new. Morse will always be an excellent songwriter and storyteller, but I just didn't find anything real new on this album to really kind of like surprise me and open my eyes. And as a final rating, I'm going to say this album is good, but it's not essential to your collection. All right, as usual, I do have the artwork here, so I will show it. And I apologize. This album is very glossy, so you might get some particularly bright glare. So I'll try to do my best. Hold it like that, maybe get a little bit. Yeah, slightly. I really like the cover of this album. I really do. And there's the back with the track listing there. The gatefold. We've got lyrics and credits and whatnot. There's nothing. No, it's on black wax. I'll just show you the labels. This is side A. And then there's side B. The other ones are exactly the same. So I won't open it and go into any detail. All right, guys. This has been a bit of a troubling review because I do like Neal Morse a lot, and I do think he's able to do a little better. But as I've said before, his weaker stuff would be any band out there's strongest. So having said that, go out and listen to it, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thanks. Good night.